Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we continue our journey through Genesis. This time we arrive at the story of Noah. When most people think about Noah, they think about the ark, the animals, the flood. But as I read this story again, one question stayed with me. What made Noah different? What kind of faith allowed him to keep going when no one else seemed to understand? Today, I want to share a few personal thoughts about Noah's faith. Noah chose to walk with God. One verse caught my attention. The Bible says that Noah walked with God. I like that expression. It does not say Noah was perfect. It says he walked with God. Walking is not something you do once. It is something you continue doing every day. That made me think. Maybe faith is not only about one big decision. Maybe it is about choosing God again and again through the ordinary days of life. Noah trusted before he saw results. God asked Noah to build an ark. That sounds simple when we already know the ending. But Noah did not. At that moment, there was no flood, no visible danger, no proof that everyone else could see. Yet Noah started building anyway. I imagine that was not easy. People may have laughed at him, they may have questioned him, but Noah kept working. Sometimes faith means taking the first step before we can see the whole picture. Faith requires patience. Building the ark was not a quick project. It took years. Day after day, Noah continued doing the same work. That reminded me that many things God does in our lives happen slowly. We often want immediate answers, immediate change, immediate success. But God sometimes works through long seasons of waiting, and faith keeps moving even when progress feels slow. Noah obeyed even when it was difficult. One sentence appears several times in Noah's story. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. I stopped when I read that, not because obedience is easy, but because it often is not. Sometimes God's direction makes perfect sense. Sometimes it does not. Yet Noah chose obedience. And perhaps real faith is not only believing God exists, it is trusting him enough to follow his direction. Something I learned personally. Reading Noah's story challenged me. I realized that I often want certainty before taking action. I want to know how everything will turn out. But Noah reminds me that faith usually works the other way around. First comes trust, then comes obedience. Later, we begin to understand more clearly. That is not always comfortable, but maybe that is how faith grows. God remembered Noah. One verse in Genesis gave me hope. It simply says, "But God remembered Noah." I love that sentence. Not because God had forgotten him, but because it reminds me that God never loses sight of his people. Even during the storm, even during the waiting, even when Noah was surrounded by water, God was still working. I think that is something many of us need to remember today. Final thoughts. When I think about Noah now, I do not only remember the ark, I remember his faith, his patience, his obedience, his willingness to trust God before he understood everything. That may be the greatest lesson of Noah's story. Faith is not about knowing every detail. It is about walking with God, one step at a time. Anyway, these are just my personal thoughts after reading Genesis chapters 6 through 9. Thank you so much for watching. Next time, we will explore another amazing story from Genesis together. See you next time.